Welcome to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series, brought to you by the CT Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. We're having a conversation about work-life balance, how to navigate and overcome challenges within your career, and how to make business more accommodating to a diverse workforce.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Working Wisdom podcast. I'm your host for today, Amanda Sebesta, the communications manager here at the Bauer College. Today, I am here with Anais Babajanian, who is a two-time Bauer College alumna, earning her BBA in accounting in 2013 and who received her MSACCY degree in 2014. She now works as a principal as ATAB Insurance Services, an independent insurance agency serving clients in Texas and California. So Anais, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So Anais, we're just going to jump right in here. So I want to start by, I just kind of gave you a quick little glimpse of who you are. Can you introduce yourself and tell listeners, what you do for a living?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a Houston native, and I studied, like Amanda said, I studied accounting at U of H. I actually started my career in public accounting, got my CPA license, worked for one of the big four firms. I worked at PwC. While I was in college, I was working part-time with my mom, who started the agency that I'm now a principal at. And I wanted to do my own thing, and so I did, and I realized the grass wasn't greener on the other side. So I came back about 3 years ago, really kind of revamped the agency, put in a lot of new operations, turned over the entire staff. So I kind of am like part salesperson, operations, marketing, accounting, kind of all in one. So a lot of work went into the last 3 years, but definitely enjoy what I'm doing and really feel like I'm adding value. So that's kind of the trajectory of how I came to where I am now.
Well, great. So you completed, Bauer College's, one of Bauer College's most popular programs, their professional program in accountancy, and it allowed you to get your BBA, like I mentioned, in 2013, and then MS Accountancy degree in the next year. Right after graduation, you worked in public accounting as an auditor in PwC. Yes. And so for someone who hasn't studied accounting or might not see the allure of studying or working in the industry, tell us what value it brought you.
Absolutely. So I had such a steep learning curve when I worked at PwC. Yes, auditing is definitely not a glamorous title by any means. When you're an auditor, you just come in and you're pointing out problems about a company and then you're leaving. So what's exciting about that? But I will say the most valuable thing I got from that experience was I really got to go into a company and see how they operate from the inside out. And that is invaluable in anything that you do going forward. Because you understand how a company operates. And so you can take that and say, okay, well, I know what shouldn't be done or how things shouldn't be transacted. So you can only go up from there. And like I mentioned, the learning curve is so steep in a deadline-driven environment like public accounting. So it just makes you a lot more resilient, and you're able to handle, fires that come your way in anything that you do later on. It is very challenging, and you're going to put in a lot of hours, but you are going to come out of it so much more marketable and so much more knowledgeable, and you can do pretty much anything you want from there on out.
Great. And so in addition to being a CPA and insurance agent, you briefly talked about this when you're introducing yourself, you're a bit of an entrepreneur now that you've joined ATAB Insurance Services. So you're not just talking or interfacing with customers and carriers, you're also helping to grow the business itself. Mm-hmm. So tell us about some of the things you've done to modernize the company.
Absolutely. So a little bit of background. So my mom and I so it's just her and I in the business, and I'm sort of trying to ease her into retirement. She's a bit of a workaholic, but we balance each other out really well. But my mom is a salesperson and nothing else. So there were no operations in place. She didn't even have an employee handbook. She didn't have any follow-up system, pipelines. She had no idea what was coming in and out. She just wanted the bottom line, I just want sales. But as anybody knows, if you don't have a solid foundation, it doesn't matter how much sales you bring in, because especially in insurance, the deal doesn't end when you make the sale. It begins. That's when you start the relationship with the customer. As with anything, right? Even if you're selling furniture, if somebody has a positive experience, that's where it begins, and you're going to sell them more furniture later on. And so Some of the things I've implemented, like I mentioned, is like I literally wrote an employee manual. I did not study supply chain management or HR. I did not know any of this. Literally taught it myself. I implemented a pipeline system, implemented an incentive program so that employees could, add more value to the agency and bring in more business. I created a website. I started our Facebook marketing campaign, started doing some video marketing as well. So those are some of the things. And I mean, it's only been 3 years. And so these types of changes don't happen overnight. But these are some of the ways where I've really, and the other thing is my mom still had paper files when I first came in. And I'm like, this has got to go. So it took me 9 months just to make her go paperless. So really, really trying to modernize. It's still a work in progress, but we've come a long way in the last 3 years. And it's also for somebody like my mom, the generational gap is definitely there. And so I'm really proud of her and that she's let me take the reins. But, teaching someone, hey, the way you've been operating the last 15 years is kind of wrong. It doesn't really sound that great coming from your daughter.
Right.
So, but she's been really great about it. And so, yeah, we've made a lot of headway in the last 3 years and just moving on up now.
Well, that's fantastic. You sound like a jack of all trades, and you're under 30. I'm not going to give out your age, but you can feel free to share that. But you've already achieved so much, just so much success professionally. You were recently featured on the cover of an industry magazine as one of the top of the 10 young independent insurance agents on the rise. So talk to us about being a millennial in corporate America.
Sure, absolutely. So especially in insurance, but I think in financial services overall, there's definitely a generation gap, especially in insurance, because some of these old timers are like, this is how it's done. You just got a cold call and you just got to go through your list and you guys don't know how to hustle and this and that. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. There are other ways to get business. And so that was really the main thing that I've taught my mom as well, is that it's not just about, having it be a numbers game. Mm-hmm. It's really having multiple touch points with your customers. Not only do you pick up the phone and try to get their business, but you're involved in their community. You have them on your subscription list. You are friends with them on Facebook, or, it's about building a story. It's about humanizing people. And so that's what I've really focused on. I think that's what most millennials kind of have in their minds. It's like, I'm not just a number, I'm a person and I have something of value to give and I want to show you that. And so that's, I think, been the most challenging thing. And also having it be less salesy, if I could use that term,
Sure.
and more of like a relationship building and sharing knowledge type of transaction, because with insurance especially, people don't want to buy insurance. They have to buy insurance, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people are like, well, just give me whatever I need, the cheapest one, and let me get on with my day. But then if a claim comes around or something happened, they're like, oh, but you didn't explain this to me. So really taking the time to educate people is what I'm really passionate about, is sitting down, especially we specialize in commercial insurance at our agency. And so sitting down with business owners and saying, hey, you put your heart and soul into this business. If something happens to it, don't you want to know what you can do or what resources you have available? So, you can go to sleep at night. And so sitting down with them and really teaching people that is really gratifying, and is one of the things that I'm trying to kind of inspire other millennial agents to do as well.
It's fantastic. And, as a millennial, and, the magazine talked about it described you as a disruptor in the industry. And so where do you think, the insurance industry is headed, and what's changing in it?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question, because this has come up so much over the last couple of years in our industry. Nowadays, I think not just in insurance, in general, but especially in insurance, is you can literally go online to Progressive and buy your own policy, right? Or go online and buy a renter's policy. And so the fear, I want to use the word fear, but the idea is that we're being replaced by, all these online gimmicks or online apps or whatever that you can buy insurance at. And so they're like, well, what's left for independent agents? Are we, going to get, replaced by all these things that people have access to? And so like I mentioned before, the the overarching conversation right now is, how can we differentiate our product? And so it goes back to creating a story and, you know, being a source of knowledge for our customer, because they can go to Progressive or Lemonade or whatever and buy a policy, but they're not going to be able to talk to a real person on the other end. If they do, it's somewhere on the other side of the world, and they're not going to give them the answer that they want. And so it's really, you know, stopping the idea that it's just been like, make your sale, get your numbers. It's more about make sure you build a relationship, make sure that your customer knows who you are, so that if something happens, it's you that they want. It's not Progressive or Travelers, right? So that's, I guess, the biggest thing that's, I guess, a challenge now in our industry.
Well, and you know, I'm no expert on millennials. I am a millennial, so maybe I guess that that would, in a sense. But you know, I mean, you see these studies out there about millennials are attracted to not the gimmicks, and they want to know the person. So it does seem to make the most sense the way you're talking about being a person, not just a figurehead behind and just being sold on it.
Right.
So, all right, cool. Well, so do you ever think your age or gender works against you? Have you faced any stigma in the workforce, and how would you overcome someone not seeing, you know, the value you might bring?
I have been in that exact situation, and I'll be honest, I took it very personally the first few times. I mean, obviously, you know, I worked in insurance prior to going into public accounting as well, so I have a total of probably like 6 or 7 years of insurance experience. But even still, especially when you deal with business owners, they're like, okay, like, do you really know what you're talking about? Like, you look really young. Like, you sure you know how to insure this like $1 million business that I built from nothing, right? But you know, I've learned, and I'm also, even though it sounds contrary to what I do, I'm a bit of an introvert, and so I have to like, but I'm good one-on-one, so I have to tell people like, I'm really knowledgeable. Let me show you what I know and what I have, and then you can make your judgment from then on out. And so, I mean, I've certainly been in a situation where they're like, okay, well, let me get back to you, or, you know, let me talk to your mom, or, you know, like, so that's definitely happened. But over the last year, I've kind of learned how to turn it around and say, I understand how you feel. It's your business. You know, putting it on them and saying, you know, I understand, you know, you built this and it's your responsibility, and I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do or what policy to buy or not to buy, but I'm here to say, this is what I have to offer. I'm sending it to you. I'm happy to have a conversation, and just kind of put the ball in their court. And I've learned that helps quite a bit. Because people have to meet you halfway. You certainly can't force them to change their perceptions of you. But the industry is changing. It used to be totally a guy's world. You know, because, you know, like, oh yeah, he, like, you know, good old boys club, and they, you know, they say, oh yeah, he's got my restaurant's good with him, or whatever. He's my guy for this or my guy for that. But I think, you know, just showing that you have that knowledge and sharing that with them, especially if you can only hope that they're open-minded, and if they're not, you just have to move on. So
yeah. Well, we are going to take a short break to hear a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Anais Babajanian. Stay tuned.
Bauer College's executive education program is training business professionals and leaders to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. Courses in consulting, strategy, analytics, project management, and more led by Bauer's award-winning faculty. Find open enrollment programs at bauer.uh.edu/exec.
And we're back. We're here with Anais Babajanian, and we are talking to her about her profession. So, Anais, we were talking, you know, about your career and that thing. So I'm kind of gonna shift gears just slightly, but we're gonna still talk about your industry. So I always think it's interesting to get a peek in the lives of our guests. So can you tell us what a typical day in your life looks like, and how you spend your time both personally and professionally?
Sure, absolutely. Well, when you run a business, you're never truly off the clock, as they say. So I really have to make an effort to kind of put boundaries on what I do in my personal life and like leave work, at a certain place. I mean, it's never all the way done. But a typical day, I usually wake up between 5 and 6. If I'm having a good day, I go work out in the mornings, maybe 3-4 days a week. If not, I'll sleep in for an extra hour. But I try to go in the mornings and then have my breakfast, have my coffee, and then head to the office. The first hour and a half of my day, really most of my day, but the first hour and a half is the most important, where I kind of sit down, I go over our pipelines, I see what came in the night before, and I delegate responsibilities to my staff. My staff, including my mom. I literally give her a to-do list. She does not, like I said, she just sales. So I have to be like, this is what I need you to do. This is your meeting. So I spend the first hour and a half of my day making sure everybody, is in a good place, that their plates aren't too full, sharing responsibilities. Then the rest of the day is kind of getting through my items. If there's a quote that I need to follow up on, or somebody I needed to meet, or, an issue that I had to follow up on. And then throughout the day, I get interrupted multiple times by my employees and my mom. Hey, Anais, can you help me with this? Hey, do you remember how to do this? What's the password to this? So that's most of what my day is, if I'm not meeting a customer. I usually stay at the office on a typical day till like about 7 after they leave, just kind of wrapping things up, because most of my day is spent running around helping other people, and so after they leave, I'm like, okay, I can finally get my work done. So I'll probably 6, 7, and then I live by myself, and so I try to find activities to do after work. I was taking salsa classes for a while. I started taking tennis lessons. Try to stay active. Get involved with the different networking events and things like that. Or there are days where I just want to be lazy and I go home and I read a book and I make myself dinner, and that's also a really awesome night. So that's pretty much how most of my days go on the weekdays. But work does. Like I said, I came to a realization this year that if I didn't put boundaries, it was going to take over my life.
Absolutely.
And that goes with anyone, not just entrepreneurs or people who run a business, even people who work in corporate America. At the end of the day, you can only do so much, and you have to know that there has to be something you're working for, not
Right.
working for the sake of working. So that's just something I've tried to be really mindful of recently
Yeah.
as I go through my days.
It'll be there tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Nobody's gonna, go up into a fire tonight. So.
Yeah, there you go. And so, the business is you and your mom, and obviously other folks, but it's you and your mom. And so, I'm interested in learning, more about your childhood and what led you to this point. So can you tell us about, just about yourself, where you're born, grew up, and what your family was like?
Absolutely. Actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because it has everything to do, the way I was raised, it has everything to do with what I'm doing now. I read a quote one time, or listened to something one time. It said, there are only 2 lotteries that you can win in life. One is the parents you were born to, and the second is the country you were born in.
Huh.
And I definitely won both of those lotteries. So I was born here in Houston, but my parents are actually immigrants. So I'm Armenian by descent, but my parents were born and raised in Iran. So they, for the first 15, 20 years of their life, it was survival mode, right? It was we should provide for the family. My mom finally took the jump to open the agency about 15, 20 years ago. But growing up, my parents, they really went the extra mile to teach me and my sister, you can, truly do anything. The most important thing you need to worry about are 2 things. One is, your work ethic. Second is your humility. It doesn't matter how successful you become, you're still a human being, and you treat other people with respect and like human beings. So that really stuck with me for my entire life. My parents instilled in me a very strong work ethic, not just in school, but in work as well. Like I mentioned, when my mom started the agency, I have an older sister, but she was already kind of in her career at that point. And so she's not part of the agency. And so I was at an age where she was like, I would need your help. Why don't you come? And I So I did, and I worked for her part-time when I was in college, and then I said I want to do my own thing, and then I did, and then she was like, I'm at a point where I really want to grow, and I know I need your skills, and so decided to come back. But I wouldn't have, and I know so many other people who work in family businesses that don't have the relationship my mom and I do, because they feel some sort of resentment, or their moms or parents are super controlling and they still want to hold on to the business. But my parents honestly instilled such a sense of like great self-esteem in me as a child, that that's why they trust me, or she trusts me now, because she knows that I'm doing it authentically, and I'm doing it for the right reasons and not because I feel like I have to. So that's that's pretty much the ideals and the way I was raised. I think coming from immigrant parents also makes you really appreciate the opportunities that living in this country and owning a business really does. There's absolutely no way my mom, as a woman, would have been able to open a business in Iran.
Right.
No way. And so just having that in your mind makes you extremely grateful every single day that I get to do this.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where it stemmed from, and that's honestly, they are the reason why I am the way I am and why I have the success that I do. Is the way that they raised me and my sister. So.
And what year did they come to the States?
So my parents came here at 1970. Well, my dad, they met here in America. They're from different parts of Iran, but my dad came here in 76, and my mom came here in 78. So right before the revolution. So they had to apply for political asylum and become citizens, and really, really wanted to be American, and really tried, had to go through it the hard way.
Right.
And that's why they appreciate it so much, is because they know that there is no other country that they could get these opportunities with. So I'm really grateful they decided to stay, obviously.
No, it's a great story. That's very interesting. So for you, when it came time to go to college and decide a career path and that sort of thing, what kinds of expectations? I know you just talked about your parents being super supportive in everything, but what kinds of expectations, if any, did you feel as a woman with your family's background, and then how did these things, if they did, shape you?
So you mean what were their expectations of me going into college, or what was expected of me going to college? Or?
I think maybe a little bit of both.
Okay.
So were there any cultural expectations or anything like that?
Sure. So I will say my parents are definitely not typical immigrant parents. They're actually quite progressive, and so they told us. I mean, obviously, they would have probably been disappointed if and no offense to anyone studying these majors, but they probably would have been disappointed if I studied, anthropology or something.
Yeah.
They definitely have a little bit of that immigrant mentality where it's you need to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or accountant. Otherwise, you're, what are you doing with your life, right?
Right.
So I already wanted to do business, so they were like, all right, that's fine. But the expectations were, at the end of the day, they knew that they had already instilled a strong work ethic in me. And so they said, just work hard and get a good job and find something that makes you happy. At the end of the day, this has been a recurring theme in my household. You need to be honest with yourself. This is a job you're going to have for the rest of your life, or this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. So be honest with yourself and realize, is this really what you want to do? That was the only expectation I had going in. Now, obviously, they would have been happier if I had chose one major over another.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, especially my dad, my mom is a little bit of a helicopter mom, but my dad is the opposite, super laid back, and he's listen, and he was an engineer, but he said, you're in charge of your own life. You're an adult. We've already done everything we can. This is what we've given you. So you make the right decision. That's, what you think is going to be good for you. And so I guess they did a good job.
Sounds like it. Yeah. No, and that obviously, led you to Bauer College. And so, what, you said you were always interested in business, but what in particular, led you to Bauer?
Sure.
And how did that experience prepare you for your current, for your career?
Sure. So So the other thing, I'm a younger sibling, and I'm a much younger sibling. My sister is 7 years older than me. So it's almost like having two moms growing up. So she also went to Bauer. She graduated with a finance degree.
Oh, okay.
And so it was kind of like, okay, well, my sister's name is Arina. Well, Arina did this. Why don't you just give it a shot? Just go to the Bauer and like see what happens. So I didn't honestly really know what I wanted to major in when I first started as a freshman. I was like, okay, I'm in the honors college. Guess I'm in the business school. Let's see what class I like most. So I took my intro to accounting class, and I have to credit my professor that I had there too, Dr. Laser, but he moved to Israel. He was such an incredible professor, and he pretty much convinced me to major in accounting. It just made sense to me. I was always always been a very black and white person, so accounting made total sense to me because there are answers and everything zeroes out, and I really like that. Very logical. So that's kind of what led me into accounting. Guess what led me to Bauer. And then I started getting recruited by public accounting firms, and they do a really good job early on to kind of snag you and tell you oh, it's going to be so great, such good experience. Not that it wasn't a good experience, but they definitely sugarcoat the experience quite a bit. And so I was like, all right, this seems cool. Like, look, at the end of the day, I know it's going to look good on my resume.
Right.
So I'll give it a shot. So that's, kind of how it led me into public accounting. And then, like I said, I didn't have the greatest experience there. It's not for everyone. Auditing is a grueling occupation, and some people love it and they're okay with it. I am the type of person that wants to help people and create solutions, and with auditing, you're just pointing out problems. Right. And so, so I did auditing, and then it made me realize, you don't appreciate what you have or what you do now until you do something that you don't like, right? So I think I would definitely wouldn't appreciate the agency as much as I do now if I hadn't had that experience in auditing.
Right.
So that's kind of my trajectory of how I, accounting and then public accounting, and then here I am now.
And here you are.
Yeah.
That's great. And so, you talked about having, accounting made sense to you because it was very logical and that sort of thing. But on the flip side of that, being creative and kind of having these innovative ways in the insurance agency, how important is it for you to stay creative? And, what inspires you? Any books, podcasts, blogs, stuff like that?
Absolutely. I will say it's something that I struggled with for a while because I'm not a naturally whirlwind creative type of thinker. I really have to make an effort and carve out time in my day to do it. So I did start listening to a few podcasts. There's a few that I like a lot. I like Tim Ferriss's podcast quite a bit. I like Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast quite a bit. Even though it's not catered to women, but there's this podcast. It's literally called The Art of Manliness, but they talk about a lot of real life things and how to deal with people and how to find ways in your day to be creative or to help in your business. So those are a few of the podcasts that I enjoy listening to that kind of give me inspiration. With insurance, it's tough because it's not, nobody really wants to watch a video about insurance. You really have to make it sexy. And so I've learned quite a bit from those podcasts and just other people in my industry. There are some trailblazers in our industry who are millennials who are, put some great content out there. So just keeping up with them and researching, the information is out there. You just have to go and find it. So
that's great. And so finally, where could our listeners find you online and ATAB Insurance Services?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook, and our agency also has a Facebook page, ATAB Insurance Services. I'll be, in the new year, I'm going to be posting some more videos, definitely more informational, but not super boring insurance stuff. We have a website as well, atabins.com. So that's where you can find a lot of information about me. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me on there as well. But hopefully have a lot more input or output in the new year and keep on moving up.
Well, Anais, thank you so much for joining us today and talking with us about, your career and your experience here at Bauer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series from the CT Bauer College of Business, brought to you by the Working Families Initiative. The initiative aims to provide support and access for women in business school and the workforce, and to generate research that organizations can use to implement policies and standards to benefit a diverse workforce. For more information about Bauer College and this podcast series, visit www.bauer.uh.edu/podcast.